Welcome. Really nice to see a completely full hall and all seats taken. Very nice to have you all here. And really, I think this is going to be a lovely evening. We're going to be talking about a absolutely brilliant book. So I'm going to start by introducing Ruchira and Swati. Ruchira Gupta is an Emmy award-winning journalist and founder of the anti-sex trafficking NGO Apne Aap that empowers women and girls to exit systems of prostitution. Ruchira has been awarded the French Order National du Mérite, the Clinton Global Citizen Award, and the UN NGO CSW Women of Distinction, among other honors, for her contribution to the establishment of the UN Trafficking Fund for Survivors, the passage of the US Trafficking Victims Protection Act, and her grassroots activism with Apne Aap. She has worked for the United Nations in Nepal, Thailand, Kosovo, Iran, and the USA. She occasionally teaches at the New York University's Center for Global Affairs as a visiting faculty. Ruchira has co-written a book with Gloria Steinem, As If Women Matter, and edited 2 anthologies, River of Flesh and Renu's Letters to Birju Babu. Ruchira's debut novel, I Kick and I Fly, which we are here to launch today, is based on true events. It tells the inspiring journey of 14-year-old Hira, who defies all odds to overcome adversities. Through its powerful narrative, the book not only aims to raise awareness about sex trafficking, but also looks into the crucial issues of bodily autonomy and the fight for education. The book has been endorsed, among others, by Gloria Steinem, Alyssa Walker, Ashley Judd, and Ayan Mohammed, and has been praised highly by BBC Women's Hour presenter Noella McGovern. It has recently been praised highly by Saikat Majumdar in The Hindu. Welcome, Ruchira, and thank you for this brilliant book. Yes. I'm also equally delighted to welcome Swati Maliwal. Swati Maliwal is an Indian social activist currently serving as the chairperson of the Delhi Commission for Women since July 2015. She has previously worked as the advisor to Chief Minister on public grievances. An engineer by education, Swati Maliwal has revolutionized the functioning of DCW in the last 7 years. She left her corporate job in 2006 to work for social causes, and for the last 15 years has worked at grassroots and top levels of management in social movements, NGOs, and Delhi government on varied issues, particularly women empowerment, anti-corruption, transparency, and local self-governance in India. Swati was the youngest member of the Core Committee of India Against Corruption, the nationwide anti-corruption movement led by Anna Hazare in India in 2011. She was the coordinator of Delhi in the movement and played an important role in the drafting of the Jan Lokpal bill. She has participated in various protests over the years and was brutally lathi-charged while protesting against the gang rape of Nirbhaya in December 2012. Swati took over as Delhi Commission for Women Chairperson on 27th July 2015, the youngest to do so. In her tenure as the chairperson of the Delhi Commission for Women, she has initiated several programs for safeguarding the women and girls of Delhi. She and her team of DCW work tirelessly day and night to ensure a safe environment for women and girls in the capital. Thank you, Swati. I'll now allow Ruchira and Swati to, we'll have a discussion on the book and on a lot of other things. So happy to, move that over to you. At the end of the discussion, we will have a Q&A also. I would request you to either go to the mic nearest you or come up to the podium and give us your questions from here. So yeah, thank you.
A very good evening to all of you. I welcome each one of you, and I'm so grateful that today I'm here among such a good audience, as well as Miss Ruchira Gupta. I still remember, I think I first met her in IIC. And at that time, I had just joined the commission and I was taking a lot of action against the traffickers at GB Road. And I was very distraught and I was having a lot of files in my hand and I was running from one place to another, and I was here for a meeting with a lawyer, with a senior advocate, as to what we can do in order to make sure that these traffickers go to jail. And suddenly I was given a tight hug by Miss Ruchira Gupta, and I was quite taken aback because I didn't know her. But she hugged me and she told me that she is there, and this is such an important fight that we are taking up, and she will support us no matter what. And it was so heartwarming because I was feeling so alone in that moment, and God kind of sent her to me. And all over these years, in these 8 years, whatever work that we have done on trafficking and whatever action we have taken against spas and all the traffickers, as well as whatever action has been done against the traffickers at GB Road, Ruchira ji has been like our torch bearer, and she has helped us all throughout. So I really want to thank her. And I think it's an honor for me to be here and for launching this very amazing book. And I just have to begin with this because our work is very dark. Our world is very dark. On a daily basis, the kind of cases that we see, we meet heroes of the world every other day. And it was very difficult for me to take this book up and for me to begin reading it because I found it very difficult. I found it something that, I mean, I had to like push myself to start the book. But once I started, I was not able to put it down. It's a brilliant book. It is written wonderfully. It shows what a profound thinker she is and what a prolific writer she is. So I'm so glad that we're going to be having this conversation today, ma'am.
I'm going to start by just reading something from the book, so to bring you into the world of Hira. This book, I Kick and I Fly, is about a 14-year-old girl called Hira, who's in a red light area in Bihar, and the very same red light area that you might have seen in the movie Tisri Kasam. And there was a heroine in that also called Hira, acted by Wahida Rahman. In my book, my Hira is in that same area, but her future is different. She actually escapes the sex trade. She doesn't become a Nautanki dancer, but discovers the power of her body through the practice of Kung Fu. I'll leave the rest of the story out because I don't want to spoil the plot. But basically, Hira is a fighter, and she discovers the power of her body by fighting. It's not that she's born to know what her body is. And this is done through the power of a community which resolves to do something around what it cares for, a women's right advocate, and also a school which becomes the symbol for the right to education, but also the fight for education and everything else. It's full of fights, it's full of kidnappings, complicated family relationships, ups and downs, international crime rings, rescues, high walls that children have to jump over. And yet there is hope and triumph in the book. So I'll just read a little section from the book to give you a flavor of what I write about and this world of Hira, the 14-year-old girl. I'm starting with a quote from Hira. What if everyone in Girls Bazaar, Chacha and Baba are right? Did Chotu die because of me? What if I did bring bad luck to the family? I voice my doubts aloud to my cousin Miradi. This grabs Miradi's attention. Since when did you begin to believe in this superstitious nonsense? I don't meet her eye, focusing instead on Jamila Bua as she fries the onion fritters for the lunchtime rush. A black crow drives a sparrow away from the garbage. It's a stark reminder that the mightiest will survive, that destiny decides who will be mighty. It's the way of the world, Miradi. If destiny hasn't decided where I was born, who has? It's all a birth lottery. I say bitterly, walking up and down inside the small space of our shack. Miradi comes and hugs me. She strokes my head. I know you feel frustrated, but do you have a choice? You must go to school. What else can you do? I steer the conversation away from my destiny and school. In my heart, I know that I don't believe the superstitions. All the women in our lane believe in the eternal, inescapable fate of our nomadic nut tribe because they can't imagine anything beyond it. There is no defiant mother or cousin or sister to fight for them. I decide to spell out my fear. What if I don't understand anything in school? There, I've said it. I don't want to be the stupidest kid in the class anymore, especially knowing what the boys will do to me. She looks at me with no expression on her face, then her brow furrows into a small fold. As far as I remember, you did fine in school. At least when you were a kid, you used to get the highest score for reading aloud in both Hindi and English. You used to be so fond of books. I could not tear you away from the school library. She smiles at the memory. I smile back. I used to love the dusty library, the smell of books, and the stories I read in the privacy of the desk between the shelves by the window. Tagore, Sharat Chandra, Mahadevi Varma, and the adventure stories by the English writers Enid Blyton and Laura Lee Hope. Words have always come easily to me. Then came the hunger, the bullying, the chores at home, my first menstruation. Everything slipped away. I did well only because you and Salman would help me when I got stuck. I mumble, my head down. Then ask Salman to help you now, Miradi suggests. He's always busy with his studies, I mutter. Can't you help me? Do you think I remember anything after the hell I've lived through these past few years? There's an aggressive edge to Miradi's voice. I see a small, worn spark of hope fight the fear in her eyes. She wants to convince me to go to school, against all the odds I must face. Under her clumsy makeup is a desperate appeal. I look at her and remember her full-throated laugh, her happiness as a girl. I resolve to rekindle the laughter, light, and hope in her eyes. I will overcome my fears for her. I will fight for my future, for the dreams that she could never make come true for herself. Outside, the sky is gray, the sun sending out weak rays through the mist. Far off, a train whistle blows. I give Miradi's hand a squeeze. I promise I will go and meet Rinidhi, the lady who wants to get me into school. I want to anyway. Miradi finally smiles again. She gets up to go. She can't stay too long in case Chacha or Shaukat start looking for her again as soon as a new client appears. She says firmly, I will send word to Rinidhi that you will go to her tomorrow. And then she ties a scarf around her head. Her body language changes. She stiffens, drawing in her shoulders as she walks away. Selfishly, perhaps, I realize I'm not just doing this for her. I want to be a person. I want to kick and fly. I want to win. I want to have the courage, like Rinidhi, to demand a life without fear. So this gives you a glimpse into the character of Hira and the struggle that she's going to go through in this book. And I have a real life person who's an activist very much like Rinidhi in my book, who has been going into the dark tunnels of GB Road, pulling out girls, trying to fight with the government to make sure there are better facilities in the shelters, food for women during COVID who were very vulnerable and already trafficked so that they could not be victimized again. She has worked tirelessly, file after file, girl after girl, law after law. So my question, I'm going to begin the discussion by putting a question to Swati. Swati, why didn't you ever give up? What is it about the scourge of human trafficking that made you focus on this as an issue above all other issues as your time as the chairperson of the Delhi Commission for Women?
It is the second most organized crime in the world. That said, each and every story is so horrific. I remember this 15-year-old girl. We got a message that she had been trafficked and she was in GB Road and she needed to be rescued. So I, along with my team, we went to GB Road and we were sitting at the police station trying to just somehow get the police to get up and go with us inside these dungeons, dark dungeons of GB Road. And while we were doing that, we were told that a particular police officer actually went to that area and tried to tell the Malkin of that kotha that this girl needs to be hidden because Swati and her team has come. Anyways, we still ended up going there. And when we rescued this girl, I was very shocked because she did not look 15 from any angle. I thought that she was somewhere around my age. And but in any case, we rescued her and then we got a bone age test done. And she was actually from 14 to 15 years of age. And she informed that she was been given injections, oxytocin every day, once or twice, and so that her body parts become bigger. And the kind of medical issues that she was experiencing, she was not able to climb the stairs of GB Road anymore because of the kind of horrific acts that she was subjected to. And on a daily basis, she was served to around 10 to 20 men. She did not get any money out of it, and she was trapped in this cycle which included drugs, which included a lot of torture, which included constant beating up, and which included being held in a cage. So if anybody in a position of power, especially, hears such stories and is not moved by it, then I really don't think that that person deserves to be in the seat that person is. But it's such a racket. One day we rescued around 17 girls from GB Road. By the time we got them to the police station, that very night, without sending them to the shelter home, without getting the child welfare committee involved, the police people sent these 16 girls, out of 16 girls, they sent them back to GB Road that very night. And it was so shocking that I issued notices, I issued summons, and somehow we were able to then manage the next day, somehow go in again, get those girls out and get them to the shelter home. But cases after cases like this come, and that is why I was saying initially that it's such a dark world. Each and every story, Hira was brave, Hira was lucky that she survived and she was not a victim of that trafficking racket. She was able to run away. But there are so many Miradis and there are so many Rosies in this world. And if all of us, with all our collective might, cannot fight to make sure that they do not fall prey to such horrible people and horrible rackets, I really don't think that we are doing any work at all. Even I would like to mention, because this book also mentions about the international sex racket and how there were people who were trafficked and how they end up in massage parlors abroad. And such massage parlors, they exist in the capital as we are speaking. According to the MCD, there are less than 300 massage parlors in Delhi. But all of us sitting here know that there are more than 3,000 to 4,000 such massage parlors. I entered one of this massage parlor because whenever we used to get a complaint, we used to write to the police and we used to ask them कि आपने क्या action लिया massage parlor पे. So they used to say कि कुछ भी नहीं है, everything is fine, nothing is wrong with the massage parlor. They are only providing massage services. But then I decided to go and I inspected one massage parlor and just opened up a Pandora's box, because when we went there, I saw this 17-year-old girl, student of a school in Delhi. She was in one room with two men, and sex trafficking was ongoing. And one massage parlor, then second massage parlor, we made sure that FIRs after FIRs were filed, people were arrested. I even made sure that we gave a very strong report, after which the LG of Delhi came out with a guideline that no more cross-gender massage will be allowed, and it was a pretty stringent guideline. But very unfortunately, because these traffickers are very strong, they have much more money and resources than people like me, they were able to go to the High Court and get a stay. So those are the struggles that we are going through on a daily basis, and I really want to congratulate Ruchira ji, because this book truly brings out the story of Hira and many other girls, because whenever people are stuck in dark problems like human trafficking, we kind of label them. They are somebody with whom you cannot relate. But this book is written in a manner which actually made me relate to every other sentence here. It had so much for me as a human being. It had so much that I could relate to even in my childhood, because she talks about how Hira's biggest fear in entering a classroom was that what will people say? And I think most children, whether they are survivors of trafficking or not, they go through something like that. I went through that all my childhood. For reasons which are quite dark, but I did go through it. So I really congratulate Ruchira ji, because she has brought about the hope as well as the joy that a child like Hira can experience if there is a Ruchira in her life, if there is a person who is willing to just hold their hand, and just a small nudge, a small smile, just a little pat on the back, and definitely Kung Fu can do wonders.
Thank you, Swati. And I just want to add that the reason I wrote this book in the voice of a 14-year-old, and it's a dark subject, as Swati has already described to all of you, it's the world of human trafficking. It's in a small nomadic community which is suffering from intergenerational prostitution. They don't even imagine they can go to school or have a different life because of the hierarchy of caste oppression. And there is rampant organized criminal networks working in collusion with police. So that is the backdrop of my novel, actually. The foregrounding of my novel is a girl who fights and fights and fights and wins. Now, the reason that I have written about this girl who fights and fights and wins as the main character is that I want to inspire other young people to fight. They should not give up, and they should learn how to break the silence. In our culture, very often, we think that by hiding something, we protect our young people, but actually secrets are not safe for the young or for any of us. So by breaking the silence, we can actually change the end for our young people. Also, by breaking the silence, we can trigger conversations which can change the system. Because when young or old read this book, they will also understand some things exactly that what Swati is talking about, some answers to things, trauma in their own lives. This book may be about an extreme situation, about a 14-year-old girl in a nomadic tribe who's going to be sold when the cattle fair comes to town, and finally ends up busting an international trafficking ring in Queens in New York. But it's all based on true life experiences. And while this situation is extreme, bullying happens to most children, body shaming happens to most children, sexual abuse happens to at least 1 in 3 in America, 1 in 5 in India, as we know as per research. And it may be more because the data is never completely out. We are looking in the dark here, and we don't talk to them about it. Even if children want to talk to us about these subjects, we say, नहीं नहीं चुप रहो, कुछ मत बोलो. तो उसके कारण हम लोग जो चीज़ें उनसे बात करनी चाहिए वो हम नहीं करते हैं. So my book is also an attempt to break the culture of silence, break taboos, end stigma and discrimination. Because I think anybody who reads the book will understand that they are not crazy, the system is crazy. Also, anybody who reads the book will feel less lonely. Just like Swati was saying that I gave her a tight hug when we were sitting in this meeting for a conference with an advocate and others. Because she has to know she's not lonely. We all have to know we are not lonely as we fight in our struggles against so many things. So this book, I call it a genre which I'm not sure exists, but it can exist. I call it social justice adventure. Because I also want young people and old people to know that social justice is an adventure. All my life, I have been an activist and I've stood up to whatever I believe is ugly or cruel or unjust. And I have enjoyed the journey. It's never been too hard because I've done it with grace and gusto and full-heartedly. And this book is also based on truth. It's based on true life experiences in my NGO, Apne Aap, where I have helped thousands of girls go through school and college. And many of the girls, just like Hira in this book now, have discovered not just the power of their body, but the power of their mind, their heart, and other parts that exist, but we try to suppress. And one is a police officer, another is a chef, another is a Domino's pizza parlor manager, two are gas station managers, teachers, of course, one's a nurse, and so on. So, there is hope. There is hope in truth as well. And I think to share a story which is based on truth but is hopeful is the best way to have this conversation. And this book is a crossover book, which is why this room today is full of adults who are friends, who have joined my activist journey in some fashion or the other all these years. Swati, of course, my very absolute specific journey against sex trafficking, but also so many others who are writers, who are fighting for religious freedom, others who are fighting against patriarchy, others who are fighting just for the truth in writing, how we analyze politics. I can see so many faces around me, people who are running children's homes, judges who actually were on the Patna High Court, people who are fighting against censorship by running YouTube channels, making sure the voice gets out. So for all of these people, they have taught me that social justice is an adventure. But the other thing which is there in this book is that there's nothing more powerful than a community which comes together and resolves to fight about something that it cares about. Because in this book, Hira, of course, is not like, it's not a miracle that she just suddenly becomes a kung fu fighter and wins a medal. There are people who support her. There's a women's rights advocate called Rini. There's a mother who's breaking stones on the highway to feed the family. There's her cousin who's already been prostituted. And Meera who insists, as you heard me read, that she go to school and she will talk to Rini. And so the whole community comes around Hira and tells her, no, you've got to go to school and stay in school. And that's exactly what this room is full of, a community which comes around together for justice against oppression, hierarchy, and unfreedom. Again, I'm quoting a person more intellectual than me who uses this word, unfreedom. But these are the things that I want us to understand and never give up, and I want the next generation to understand. I also find that adults sometimes are scared to touch on these issues. Through Hira, if they read this book and share it with somebody else, they might find an easy way to have a conversation. And the third thing is that many adult books which have the voices of children, they suppress children's voices by making the voices in a kind of fog. And Anne Patchett has written a wonderful book called The Dutch House. And then, of course, there's Arundhati's God of Small Things. But the children have things done to them. They are in a kind of fog. How about offering children, young adults, role models where they have agency? So my Hira has agency. She changes the end of her own life story. But she also changes the end for the other Hira that I started today talking about in Tisri Kasam, who cannot ever be with Hiraman and he has to take 3 vows. No one has to take 3 vows in my book. They fight back and win. So I think we have to change the culture also by talking about that we can fight back and win. And again, back to Swati, because I know she has a question for me, and I want to let her ask it.
I just want you to share the what was the most difficult part of writing this book? And what were your feelings while you were writing it? Because this book is really about feelings and emotions. I'll just read out a little bit from what really moved me and made me cry, because probably it has something to do with what I went through as a child. So this is by the father of the girl. And it says, "My daughter, a girl from an oppressed caste," Baba says, shaking his head in disbelief. "You won a medal in a stadium full of people, from the entire district of Araria." He reaches out for the medal hanging around my neck. I realize then I've been waiting for this moment all my life. And after some time, the mother and the brother are actually discussing that how this one moment changed the father. And so they're discussing. So the mother says that, "I think he has hope again, Hira." She says softly, her eyes wet. Salman takes it even further. Salman is the brother. "I think his pride in you has made him look for his own self-respect." I think these are such moving lines, and the entire story is so moving, and it touched me a lot. I cried at this moment. I think all of us have always looked for parental approval, and it is something that really, really moved me. But coming back to my question, so I want to know that exactly what were your feelings while you were writing it? Because it's not easy. You see this pain, you imbibe it, but what did you feel through it, and how were you able to encapsulate everything, all the emotions that Hira and her family has gone through so beautifully?
It was a hard journey writing the book, because I sometimes had to shut my eyes and go back to very traumatic moments and put myself in the shoes of my characters and think about what they must have gone through. Earlier, as an activist and the leader of an NGO, I had to detach myself when I was in the moment to keep a cool head and get things done. But when I was writing the book, I had to imagine the thoughts and feelings, so it was very hard. Because why was Hira shaking like a leaf when she walked barefoot into a classroom where everyone else had shoes? I had to think about that. I had to think about, why did she have to steal an egg for her little sister? Why was the mother so dependent on not going to the hospital but going to the local doctor who gave her just a banana instead of medicines? Why these dilemmas, and why did people make these wrong choices which seemed so obviously wrong? And I had to still show them as people who could think, who could feel. I did not want to stigmatize them, and I did not want to show them as, these are people who sell their daughters, and these are good people, and these are bad people. So I had to show that there's a backstory to every single person. So if the father is going to sell his daughter into a cattle fair, it doesn't mean that he wants to do it. He was evicted from a place where he was squatting near the railway tracks. And he was evicted by people who said that you have to choose a religion. You're neither Hindu nor Muslim, you're a nut, you have to choose a religion. And therefore he was suddenly evicted and racing off and ended up in a red light area. The community which is living on the railway tracks near the red light area, they are from a nomadic tribe which were labeled as criminal tribes under British colonialism, which means that the moment they were labeled, they were banned from either living in one place in the forests. They were banned from any of the occupations they had, making medicines or trading in goods or whatever, even traveling from one place to another. And so they ended up squatting on zamindari land or land of British authorities and performing the most menial chores for them, including being available sexually. And over the years, they forgot who they were, and prostitution became intergenerational. And when India became independent, Nehruji got rid of the Criminal Tribe Act, but the stigma and the discrimination remained. So for me to explain this backstory, and that too for young people, so they don't see things in black and white, but they understand complexity, I try to do it through the arc of the father, because the father comes in the beginning as a really bad guy who's about to sell his daughter, and then how does he change? And it had to be convincing, it had to be true. And of course, I based it on truth, but I also tried very hard to give it an arc which kids could connect with. And like all great literature, you know, it's based on truth and hope. And I hope it's considered at least good literature, if not great literature.
It's really, really good. I had one more question. So I wanted to know that what is this Kung Fu connection? And it actually inspired me to take up Kung Fu. So I'm thinking about it, and I mean, I read it like today. I finished the book today only, but yeah, I am thinking about it. So what is this connection, and the way you have used it to inspire hope and to, you know, really make her fly? It's so beautiful. So what exactly was the link? And I also know that you had in Apne Aap in Forbesganj had a karate class.
Yes.
So if you could tell a bit more about it.
So, you know, when we opened a community center in Forbesganj, in this nut community in the red light area in Forbesganj, the criminals would live alongside with the women that we were trying to help. And in the middle of that, we are trying to get the girls into school. Our own community center was just a mud hut, you know, with a door which barely locked, you know, so anyone could walk in. And I would tell the girls, no, you must go to school. And they would say, why? Mela to aane hi wala hai, hum log ka kya zarurat hai? And then the mothers, if they would even think otherwise, the fathers would beat them. Many of my board members from the NGO are here, so they know the struggle. And, you know, it was kind of difficult. And if the children would go to school, they would be bullied badly because they were from the red light area, then they were from an oppressed caste, then they never had the proper clothes. Then they were first generation learners, then they were too hungry to focus on lessons. So I used to think, how will all this work, you know? So I had applied. At that time there was a scheme called the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, and through that, you know, NGOs were allowed to run hostels. So I applied for that, and we got a Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalaya girls hostel to run. And we were thrilled, and we said, okay, now the girls can meet the mothers and still be safe in this hostel, and we can hire teachers who will teach them, and they'll do as well as the other kids. But of course, you know, we were up against the system. So instead of a building, we had a chabutra because the principal had siphoned off the money. So then we rented a building to educate the girls. And the building landlord and the walls were low, and the criminals would just come and try to kidnap the girls. And the landlord would also ogle at the girls and all of that. And we would, then I would call up the Chief Minister of Bihar, I would call up Secretary Education, who was a wonderful man. He's now the Secretary or Advisor to the Bihar Museum, and that time he was Secretary Education. So I would say, Anjali ji, ye ho raha hai, kuch kijiye. Anjana was my lawyer at that time, then she went on to become a judge, and I would say, how do I file cases against all these traffickers, you know, they're kidnapping my girls. And so he said, Anjali ji called up the principal and said, the Chief Minister is going to come and inaugurate this hostel, so you better get the building ready. The building was ready. We got money to build higher walls, but even then the kidnappers were coming and kidnapping the girls. I was thinking, I said, you know, I don't know if I can keep the girls in school. I don't know what's going to happen, what their future is going to be. And I used to go to the community center from my home every day and see some people teaching karate to some kids in a rice field. So I went to this couple, it was a man and a woman, and I said, would you come to our community center and to our girls' hostel to teach karate to our kids? Because I thought, even if these girls are kidnapped, even if someone tries to pull them away, at least they can kick a few teeth in. And so that's how we started the karate classes. And I had no idea about the impact of it, because once the girls began to do well in karate and began to win gold medals, then what happened was they actually won the respect of the class. So the bullying stopped. The town people who used to tell me, why are you mixing up girls from the town with girls from the red light area? You should have two schools. Suddenly began to think, oh, these girls are bringing gold medals back home, so it's great. The girls themselves began to feel better about themselves. One girl told me that learning self-defense, I learned I have a self worth defending. And that girl's courage, when the first girl won a gold medal in karate, you know, everything changed in the community. For me, of course, it was huge, because it was sort of my belief that she can do it. And this was something she could compete with other kids on. You know, if you can't compete in English and all, you can compete in karate. And they came from a nomadic tribe where there were pehlwans, right? So these kids had learned how to be pehlwans. They'd seen their uncles and others who were champion wrestlers. They also knew tightrope walking, so they were a little agile and flexible and all of that. So they were doing very well. And then other women began to think, oh, then if these girls can do well, then my girls can do well too. So this girl's courage was contagious. And it triggered change in the whole community. And that's when I realized that, you know, in spite of all the challenges, there's nothing more important than a community coming together and fighting it out. And the program has sustained all these years. जहाँ पर 72 brothels थे, आज वहाँ पर 2 brothels हैं. The trafficker is in jail with life imprisonment, for which my girls went and testified to the Verma Commission for the law which we use to put that trafficker, Gainul, in jail. He's mentioned in the book. The lady who helped us fight that case became a judge. So you can imagine everyone's lives change. I'm in the UN, I'm advising the UN on laws and policies, but it all began from change which began at the bottom and transformed the top. And it has sustained in spite of many, many challenges that my NGO has faced. The girls are still going to school, karate classes are still continuing, and I don't feel like giving up because they are not giving up. And so that is why, you know, this book was written in this way, because it's based on truth, you know. It's very, very. So now I know we do have time for questions later, but before we begin the questions, I think that I want to announce a campaign based on the themes in this book, as I mentioned: bullying, body shaming, sexual abuse, hunger, homelessness, poverty, international crime. But also the positive themes in this book are bodily autonomy. The other theme is ending stigma and discrimination, of course, girl power, body power, and all of these things. So we have decided that along with the book, as it travels all over the world, this book is already launched in the United States, and it's been to many schools and libraries and different platforms across America. It's got great reviews there as well. And in UK, it was launched just last month. Greece, Turkey, it's coming out in many languages as well. And I hope it will come out in Hindi as well. We are talking about it. And there you are, the publisher saying yes. So there I have it. And so today we are also using this occasion to announce a campaign called Unlabel Me. And this is for every girl or boy out there who have to take on stigma and discrimination, you know, either as girls, boys, whatever sexuality they are choosing, because of the color of their skin, because of people tell them you're too dark, too fair, too fat, too thin, too tall, too short. You know, there's always, in our culture, we keep telling people, don't do this, don't do that. Same thing in America with all the media messaging from all the beauty companies, you know, do this, do that, choose this sexuality, don't choose that sexuality. So we are launching a campaign along with this book, I Kick and I Fly, which we call Unlabel Me. And the campaign has a little video which we are going to play for you. So please do watch this video.
This was a really, I think it was a great conversation to have, and lovely to hear you read from the book also. It just makes it come alive even that much more. Opening the house now for questions. If you want to come, can you try to come? The camera will be able to capture you if you can come to the podium. So it might be best to come this side.
And if you don't feel like coming to the podium, it doesn't matter, you can ask your question from where you are, because it's too difficult to walk around.
Camera can move.
Turn your camera that side as well.
If you have a mic, you can just put that on.
I have a few very important points, because they are very much related to the thing here. One is that, I'd like to say a little bit about Bikhre and Moti, what I feel.
Press the key,
please. Okay, sorry. Bikhre and Moti is a theme that struck me here, because you see, there is Ashutosh here, and there is Swati here, and of course your judges here. I mean, you see, when we're talking about the whole point that, what happens to such a person who is a prisoner of the system, system at the highest and the dirtiest level, how do you rescue that person? And to rescue that person is again the same thing that, what they started with, Ashutosh started what brought her there, and what inspired the author, and what made the advocate the judge. I mean, they'll have to come back again, After all their differences, they'll have to come back again to fight the system. Because you see, individually they're all failing, I mean, the commission, she is there, the government that she is there is also failing, the systems are failing, but the question remains, So that is one issue. The other is that, I mean, when will this earth be ready to receive thy saints, Because I see, the main protagonist of the novel is a saint. I mean, that's how we should look, Somebody said in the Bible, it said that, about Abraham, that, he was asked that how old are you? He said, the years of my pilgrimage are 80 and plus, So the years of pilgrimage of these saints, I mean, when we would realize that, when would the earth be ready to receive them as saints, for all that? And then, I come back to what I wrote as a child, as an author, a child, because my mother inspired me, I wrote a tale about a girl, a princess who's lost in a forest. And she goes back and to the animals there, and friends there, Then her father discovers her and wants to take her back, So he calls her. And so he calls her, and she said, I'll be happy with my friends, in the forest, I don't want to set into a stereotype, So you see, that kind of person. Now we've named the protagonist here as Hira, The question is that, Hira itself is a symbol, I mean, why Hira, Because, and we have to clarify that also, that instead of Hira, it would be what the presentation said, that, me as I am. Why not Razia, the first queen that we slaughtered, at the altar of patriarchy, Because Hira, again, the whole thing is that you see somewhere, the very epitomization of a system that, this is Hira. I mean, who are they to say, and what is Hira? Okay, fine, and that's at the thinking point, And last thing would again be, that, that, at the end of it, I would say that, when we come back to it, the road is long, and it's hard, So let's all be together in it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Shall we take 2 or 3 questions together?
And then you can
Let's
ask
start
them.
from the end. And can you keep your questions short, because otherwise other people won't be able to ask questions.
Some observations and then a quick question.
Press the key there.
It should be green.
Is it done? Well, will you press the key for me?
Will you try speaking into this?
Okay. Some observations and then a quick question. When an author sets upon a task like this novel, she imagines the character. And with the purposeness that's driving her, she also laces that character with a lot of experience, morality, challenges, and so on. I'm immediately reminded that this book is a milestone in the literary journey of women's emancipation over the last century and a little more. When most of you were not born, another person, like our friend Ruchira here, imagined a character, set out in most difficult and challenging times. And that was Thomas Hardy. When he wrote Tess of the Yobevils, it was a character set in a most unpopular setting. And throughout the novel, Hardy insists that Tess is a pure woman. Like Ruchira insists in her book that this girl has a life, a beautiful life, and a yet more beautiful life onwards. And in those times, the first few publishers completely rejected Hardy's work because it was so much against the tide. The history of feminism in literature has taken its march down the time, and I'm delighted to see this. And I thought I will share my perceptions here because of the august company here. We have Her Ladyship Justice Mishra here, we have Ashutosh here, we have the chair of the Women's Commission, and most of you. I compliment Ruchira on behalf of my very dear friend Amina Sherwani, who had asked me to convey her greetings to her. And the question to her is, are you imagining, or are you intending, or are you thinking, or would you consider writing a sequel? Like Through the Looking Glass was a sequel to Alice in Wonderland, of a stage wherein women who are in the sex trade and who have graduated or come out of it, they face a new challenge, the challenge of acceptance by the society. I wish some of these women were trained as lawyers who could join other senior lawyers. I wish some of them could be trained as journalists, and then the challenge of accepting them and I would say, recovering them back to the society. So that's the reclamation that we need to do, and the reclamation of souls and of fellow human beings is the next journey I look forward to coming forth from Ruchira's pen. Congratulations once again, please.
Thank you. We'll take
Thank
one
you.
more question.
Ruchira, you are also a tremendous filmmaker, so I have a question in two parts. Does that influence the style of your writing? How does it impact being a filmmaker? You've written scripts. B, is this the beginning of a film? Thank you.
There seems to be another side to all this dark story. You know, I attended a talk arranged by, I forget the name of the person who organized it. He was a well-known author, social activist. He's written books on poverty and hunger. And interestingly, this was at the India Habitat Center, and the dais was full of, dais had 5 or 6 prostitutes who were going to talk about their experiences. And they were basically maybe a little better off than GB Road types, but certainly not the call girl types either. And they said that they explained how they got into the trade because they had terrible families, their husbands got drunk, and they were poverty stricken. So that's how they got into it. But most of them said that they were perfectly happy with what they were doing. They were not ashamed of what they were doing, and some of them said they would not even accept jobs outside because this was so much well-paying. Okay, so this was quite astonishing to me. But this is what I mean, that none of these girls said that they were miserable, that they were miserable, that's why they got into this trade, but once into it, when they were successful, they seemed to be quite okay. Thanks.
Hi, good evening. I think the discussion was excellent, and my question is going to be short. Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. All right. So I'm actually very curious to know how it all began for you, because I know very clearly when it all began for me, which was in school. No one will know this, but Ruchira and I are from the same school, Modern High School for Girls in Calcutta. And I was in class 8 when you came for a session with my batch, and you told us a story for an hour, and half of us were crying. We just couldn't believe that something like this is happening with girls who are our age, girls who are younger. It became very personal for us at that moment. So that's when it began for me, and it led me to start Women's Conclave in college, which you inaugurated for us. And I also interned at Apne Aap during the COVID pandemic, so I know exactly what you're talking about because we researched that together. So since you were so important to my beginning and my awareness of this world, I want to know how it began for you and what was the exact incident or the moment where you realized that this is a problem. Thanks.
I think I'm going to stand and answer so people can see us.
So I think there were 4 questions, and if I forget any, then you can remind me. The first is there going to be a next novel? Of course there's going to be a next novel, but it's not about the same subject. It's about something else, and I'm not going to reveal the plot right now because I want you all to read this book, enjoy this plot first, and then if you like this one, then buy the next one. And then the next question was that is the book going to become a movie? I really want it to become a movie or a net series or something because I think it can make a bigger impact and go to more people, because some people don't like to read books now, but they do watch movies or TV series. So I do hope it'll become something and it'll reach more people. So we'll see what happens. But yes, the fact that I do make documentary films did influence my style of writing, because I would actually shut my eyes and imagine the scene. And I would, hear things, and I would look at the visuals and the frames. So some of the descriptions are very graphic that you will read about. And all the reviewers in America have mentioned that the descriptions are very visual. So perhaps that there is a connection subconsciously. Then there was a third question that for many women, maybe prostitution is a better option than poverty. Actually, the truth is that prostitution is not a sustainable livelihood. So you earn, if you are allowed to keep what you earn, and Swati can attest to that even better than I can, or Kiran, or Anjana, all the other women who are sitting here, that actually you might earn the most on the first day in the job. And because it is based on something called body invasion, it has physical and mental health consequences. And research now shows that women in prostitution suffer from higher rates of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, than even returning war veterans. Ranging from, and I'm not talking about, the obvious things that you'll think of, HIV and AIDS because of repeated body contact, but COVID has taught us that even if someone coughs near us, we feel scared. Imagine a woman who has to have multiple body contacts with someone who's unbathed, unwashed, fat, thin, disease-ridden, cannot ask, cannot do anything about it, and there is no choice. So prostitution really is based on absence of choice. And it does not make women richer, it makes them poorer. And after the time they are 30 or so, after 4 or 5 years, there is no shelf life. And so it's disease and death is the old age pension in prostitution. So when you meet someone on stage who says, this is what I want, she's talking about the moment, because the trauma does not allow her to think of anything else in that moment. So you have to understand that. And to answer Sehrish, it's been an amazing thing to have you in the audience, I was thinking. And, what is my own journey? My own journey was in an all-girls school, where it was quite a strict school in Calcutta, with very upper-class kids who would come there. I had never even seen the inside of a police station, let alone a brothel. And from there, I decided to become a journalist because I grew up in a Gandhian household. And my family was very influenced by ideas of social justice and bringing about change. And my father still wears homespun till this day. My mother's never worn jewelry all her life. My father went to jail for India's independence. Dr. Ramano Loya was my uncle's closest friend. They both were students together, holding their first meeting for Nehru in Calcutta. And then they went off to London and Berlin to study, and then they came back and stayed together and started various kinds of socialist parties and the Nepali Congress in my house. So my house was like a salon, and nobody would teach me that what do you do. What they would ask me is what do you do for others, and I would hear them also talking about that to other people. So that's what I imbibed. And because the house was like a salon, I thought, what can I do? I wanted to be a writer since I was a kid, because Bengal and Calcutta influenced me. Everybody wanted to be a writer. Everyone wrote poetry. So I thought, okay, if I can't be a writer, I'll be a journalist, And I joined the Telegraph newspaper, and Paranjay is here from those days. And, it was quite a rebellious organization even then. And I learned about fighting, writing, breaking censorship, breaking rules, and all of that. And just continued on that journey, to the point that when I was finally walking in the hills of Nepal, I was hiking that time, and I came across rows of villages with missing girls. I asked the villagers where the girls were, and they said, don't you know, they all are in Bombay. And that was a bit surprising to me. So like a good journalist, I had to follow the story. And I found little girls locked up in small rooms in the brothels there for years. And, the journalist who went with me at that time was Anurag Chaturvedi, who was in the room, but maybe he's gone out. And we would try to fathom that what do we do about this? This was shocking, girls in cages. So and as a journalist, I thought I would tell the story. I ended up making a documentary on the subject called The Selling of Innocence. I won an Emmy for Outstanding Investigative Journalism for it. And I was on stage in the Broadway Marquis Hotel in New York, and with the bright lights and applause. And when I was looking from stage, all I could see were the eyes of the women who had told me their stories. And I thought, I'm not going to use this Emmy to build a career in journalism. I'm going to use the Emmy to make a difference. So I went back to Bombay with the award, sat on a straw mat with the women, and I said, what do you want? And they had 4 dreams. They said, school for our children, a room of our own, Virginia Woolf for those who love literature, and a job in an office. And if you saw the chawls of Bombay with the rats and 20 rooms to a toilet and muscle men sitting and constant noise and smell of pee and sperm, you can imagine what that meant when they said a job in an office. And they said punishment of the perpetrators. Now, by punishment, they didn't say death penalty or anything like that. They said, we want surety of punishment. That's all. We don't even want them to get, lifelong jail and all, but we want them to be held accountable. And so those 4 dreams became my business plan, and that's how I started the NGO Apne Aap. And my model was based also on something that the women taught me, because when I was filming, a man had pulled out a knife at me, and I had no one to protect me except the women. They surrounded me, and they said, if you want to kill her, you've got to kill us first. And the man thought it was too much trouble to kill 22 women, so he slunk away, and they saved my life. So I thought, this power of women's collective action, I've experienced it. That's what we'll do. We'll keep forming circles of women and keep standing up for things. So that's how Apne Aap began. That's how my journey began. And, it continues. So are there any other questions, or can I now call it an evening? Thank you all for being here. It's just such a great moment to see all my friends' faces around the room. It's wonderful. So thank you all for being here. And now I give Tina.
Ruchira, thank you. And Swati, thank you also. I think this was a great discussion. We're really looking forward to many more books from you, Ruchira. And I think this is a book that it's very crossover, as you would have gathered, from the themes that it talks about. But I like the fact that it's a social justice adventure, which makes it something that, a child or, young adults are going to look at. And it is, I think, in some ways inspirational also, because they're looking at a world that they are just not exposed to. And I think Hira's delivered so many punches, but I think the biggest punch is from you, Ruchira. This has been a really good book. So thank you. Thank you for being here. And yes, and a very big thank you to IIC for, having us in this room. I think it was the perfect kind of setting for a discussion like this. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Why don't you have her name written?
I'll take your photo.
From where?
Very good. How are you?